This is the last in a series of mixers that we've been doing over the summer that have been part of a larger initiative to put forth, that's been put forth by the mayor, so that we can continue to live and work in this city, particularly creatives of color. These mixers, along with lots of focus groups and interviews out in the community, have given us a chance to hear directly from the creative community and on what needs to change. Your candid input, real talk, as it's mentioned in the title of tonight's gathering, it's super important because it's going to directly help shape how the city moves forward with solutions that will change the status quo. We are really hopeful and have a lot of agency here, and so hopefully real talk and candid input can help us be able to report back and influence this change. More details on the Creative Economy Initiative will be unveiled tomorrow at the Mayor's Arts Awards, which everyone is invited to. It's at 4 o'clock at the Seattle Center. Yeah. It'll be really fun, so please join us. And then as well as by the city in the coming months. So we're here to do some connecting, some networking, talk about our experience in Seattle's arts and creative arenas, and advocate for the things that the city needs to do better. So again, candid feedback and input is so welcomed. This is an exciting opportunity to be part of real change and to provide feedback for how the city can become better advocates for creatives and artists and cultural workers. So tonight you're going to hear from 3 amazing leaders in the arts who I admire and respect so much, and I'm sure you do as well. We'll discuss creating culture shift to advance equity in the arts professionally as well as personally within our relationships in the community. So we are going to hear from them first, and then we're going to hear from all of you, and we'll be doing some exercises around storytelling and sort of digging out what is needed and what the opportunities might be. So with that, I'm going to welcome the incredible Sarah Porkolov to take it over. Thank you.
This is a little atypical of a setup, but don't worry, later you're going to find out why all this open space is there, because you won't fill it. Yeah, so for those of you who'd like to move closer, anybody on the outside standing, if you want to take a seat, please feel free to do so. If anybody feels compelled to move closer at any time during this panel, we're not going to say nay. Oh, am I not even on? Wow, I'm an actor. Thank you. Are you on? Thanks for taking care of me, Reese. Awesome. So hi everybody, my name is Sarah Porkolov. My pronouns are she and her. I'm an artist activist in the city, working professionally for the last 7 years as a storyteller and community activist. That's essentially what I do. I write plays, I direct and produce. Be on Broadway next year, catch me there. And then why I'm here tonight, well thanks. Thank you. Didn't mean to throw out that Broadway card. Yes, I did. But really, why I'm here tonight is because I believe that true equity and justice requires a huge cultural shift from every single person. And my artistic background and my career and my lived experience has led me to storytelling. And I believe that storytelling is one of the most rigorous tools that I have to help create and shift that culture. I could be totally wrong, like I'm only 30, so like maybe next year I could think, wow, storytelling is not the answer. Coercion is. Just kidding. We'll see. So yeah, up here I have 2 people that I love and respect so deeply, and so what I'd love to hear from my friends to the left and right of me is, who are you? What are your pronouns? What do you do? And why you're here. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I'm going to give you 8 seconds to think about it. And go. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take it away.
Ooh, I'm first. Okay. I'm Danny Terrell. What I do is a bunch of stuff. I am a choreographer. I am a part-time dancer, which means I'm retiring from moving my body. I am a curator at Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas.
Yeah.
That's my boss. She knows this. I teach at the University of Washington, Seattle campus in the dance department, and I'm about to start at the Bothell campus. So I teach dance history, especially when it's around vernacular dance and Black folks in dance. I'm proud to be guiding young dancers at Northwest Tap Connection. So that's what I do. I talk a lot. I ask a lot of questions that get me in trouble.
Yeah.
Why am I here to do exactly that? To talk a lot and ask questions and pose questions that will get me in trouble. Yes.
I love that. Thank you, Danny. Take it away. Who are you? Why are you here? What do you do?
My name is Reese Taimora. I am a gender non-conforming woman. That means I use she, her, and they, them. And let's see, what do I do? I sometimes discount the fact that I am now an arts administrator, but I am the managing director of Northwest Folklife. I am the chair of the Seattle Music Commission. I'm also a musician. I direct an all-women and non-binary jazz band, 18-piece jazz band.
What? Skibbity-boop
I am a member of a queer urban bluegrass band. I was also a member of the first in Seattle all-women Heart-Shaped Boxes, which was a Nirvana cover band with all and I am an arts activist and advocate and very passionate about community. And in my life I've been an educator, and I guess I continue to claim that education and youth development as a core part of what I do. And why am I here? I'm here for all the reasons, all the things, to support all of the things that I love. But I think, like at the core, when I suddenly realized that I'd been fed a history of everything, but a history of arts and music that erased the accomplishments and the contributions of people of color, of women, of particularly Black women of color. At that point, I said, that is wrong, and so what are the places that I can impact and affect and bring that history to light so that we can draw from the strengths of our community? Because I think what I see is a lot of talk about artists and art and from a deficit standpoint, and I'm done with that. So where are the places that the strength comes from? And it's there. It's been a little bit invisible, but how do I make that more visible? So that's the work that I come from.
Okay, thank you, Reese and Danny, for giving those super real talk answers. Amazing. So before we move into the rest of the programming, I just want to explicitly acknowledge that, like, we're here in this room, like, we're here, and as a facilitator myself, there's one thing that I really believe in, which is a set of, like, community agreements, that for the time being, like, as we're in this room, we are literally here together. So to not articulate the things that we're committed to in like an accessible, broad way, I think is a mistake. So since I was chosen as the facilitator and the moderator for this, here are my group agreements that I would like to extend to all of you, to Reese and to Danny, and Reese, if I'm not saying what needs to be said, or if I'm like saying something that you think is incomplete or perpetuates harm, please call me in on that. Great. So for the next, I don't know how long are we here? Till 7? Yes. Until 7, I, as the moderator, facilitator, also as a creative in the community, would like to cultivate brave space, encourage people to do the same, to speak our truths,
that as we break out into these groups, to remember to move up and to move back. So what does that mean? It means that you as an individual have a sense on how much space you take up in a room. If you're someone in the group who has a tendency to take up more space, I offer this invite to you to consider to move back. If you're someone who is a little bit scared or is more introverted, I offer this space as an opportunity for you to move up. And if we do that for each other equitably, we're already radicalizing how we're maintaining space between us and utilizing it. I also ask that we all try to recognize how our own social positioning informs our perspectives and reactions to our colleagues and facilitators. Differentiate between safety and comfort and identify where our learning edge is and push it. All of you, when you signed in there and got your name tags, have the opportunity to grab 2 handouts. These are handouts that I use in my work often. It dives more into what social positioning is, as well as what white supremacist culture and transactional culture looks like. Don't worry, we're going to get to that fun stuff later. But as we move forward, I'm going to keep iterating this as we move into the storytelling exercises, because I really don't think it can be said enough, and that as we continue to say it, we will continue to hopefully embody it. Now, for a round of rapid fire, are we ready?
Yes.
Here we go.
Yes,
okay. They don't know what I'm going to ask them. Danny, Crocs or socks with sandals? Rule of the
You
game.
know I'm dressed.
Rule of the game is you have to choose, and you have to choose one. Crocs or socks with
You
sandals?
see how I'm dressed?
Go on. I gave that specifically to you.
Oh my God. Crocs.
Alright, okay, Reese, you ready?
Ooh, socks with sandals, because I have good socks.
Oh, that is not what I want of us. I'm a socks with sandals because I think Crocs are just. Ooh. Okay, you ready for the next one? Karaoke or dance battle if it was up to you to save the end of the world by winning one of them?
Well, it's not going to be a dance battle, so.
Recognize your strengths.
Okay, get free right here, yeah.
Yeah, karaoke.
Karaoke, I'm just tired of dancers. So I know that's shady. What up?
It's some real talk. Here we go. Okay. Another one. Oh my gosh. Okay, Diana Ross or Donna Summer? Last chance tonight.
Are you talking about vocal ability?
Oh.
Or are you talking about fashion?
I'm talking about if you had to listen to only one of them for the rest of your life, who would it be? We can come back to you.
Because she's from Detroit, I'm from Detroit, I'm going to have to say Diana Ross.
Okay.
Diana Ross.
Yeah, me too. Gosh dang it. I thought there was going to be more division here. Okay, how about this? Rice or noodles?
Rice.
Rice.
Because you can make noodles from rice. Win-win.
You can make a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh my gosh, we're so much more united than I thought we would be. Okay, one last one. Beyonce or Rihanna? Oh.
Beyonce all day.
I'm going to go with Beyonce.
Okay, so I'm gonna say that she's the queen, but if I had to choose, as in like she had one less person standing her, I would just have to say Rihanna, because the queen will always have fans. Rihanna hasn't made a CD in how long?
There's a reason.
She's okay, now we're moving into division. So why am I asking these rapid fire questions? So let's just acknowledge the question that this mixer is proposing tonight, right? It's what can we, the city, the creative community, each of us individually do to mitigate racial disparities in the creative economy? I think it's a very valid question. I also think that by asking that question, what I have found in spaces like this, similar to this, adjacent to this, is that asking this question often moves away from the strengths and the skill set that we have as creatives in the community. So what I have found in those rooms, and I'm like, gosh, I feel like we're talking about the same kind of stuff. And yet, what's happening at the end of the day is how we even talk about it contributing to the perpetuation of these ways of being in the world systemically and institutionally. Whoa. So that's when my mind started to shift like 3 years ago. So now I was like, okay, well, what is this way of like being in the world that I'm like experiencing? And in the last couple of years in my own like education, my collaboration with the city, it's come to the very forefront of my mind that this culture that we live in as Americans, and I'm speaking broadly, and I want to acknowledge that there are exceptions, but I'm speaking broadly because I think that everybody in this room can find a kernel of truth in this. That as Americans, the overarching umbrella of the culture that we live in is a white supremacist dominant culture. And that this culture is pervasive, it's huge, and it's often invisible. So that as we begin to articulate how it impacts each and every one of us, we often can see it manifesting systemically and institutionally, because those are the big things, right? We're like, I can see how it's manifesting between these institutions and in my own institution. Yes. And even talking about those things is a strength, and I think moves us towards equity. I also know that how we can talk about white dominant culture on the interpersonal, person to person, and internally within ourselves can contribute to a bigger culture shift. So that's what I do as a storyteller. So as we're moving forward in this workshop, just kind of keep those worksheets handy. You won't need them for the exercise, and then I'm going to lead you through, but maybe at the end of the night, you can look at it and be like, oh, that's helpful, or like, wow, that's, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. Just they're meant to be a tool. Hopefully. I could be totally wrong. So as we're thinking about this conversation, right, like, I was like, I could ask Reese and Danny, like, what obstacles have you encountered? But, I know them. I've seen them. Admittedly, they are different for me as a cis woman who is able-bodied, who is not, while I am a woman of color, a black woman. So my intersection of identities is very different than someone who is black, a woman, disabled, older than me, younger than me. Just want to acknowledge that all of those things are true. That's what the beautiful world of intersectionality encompasses, that we walk in our lived experience at a unique set of intersections that changes day to day, moment to moment, person to person. So instead of being like, hey guys, what obstacles do you encounter? Let's relive our trauma. I'm going to say this. In the work that you do as cultural workers, as you've come up against these obstacles, whatever, I know that you've also learned how to cultivate a certain skill set that maybe some people would recognize in you as a strength, or maybe some people recognize in you as like, oh, that's a troublemaker. But for you, it's a strength. It's something that you can draw power from. Let me give you 10 seconds to think about a strength of yours that you have ownership over, that you're accountable to, that is like empowering to you. What is one of those strengths, and how does that manifest in your relationships with your fellow collaborators, your community, even you, the talking to yourself version of you? 10 seconds, ready, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to model this by giving a brief example. One of my strengths in the work that I do is that I can find a reason to laugh at anything. And not laugh at it in like a dismissive, self-deprecating kind of way. I think that self-deprecating humor is the worst type of humor. And I also believe that coming from my immigrant family that grew up poor and is like hella queer, that because of the trauma we've experienced across generations, we have had to find a way to laugh at things, or else we just walk around going, we're like rageful. I'm definitely rageful, but I can also make jokes about it. So how does that manifest when I'm with people? I love to make people laugh. If we can laugh about white supremacy, woo! I'm about it. So that's one of my strengths. Annie, Reese, one of yours?
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Reese is giving me that look.
Yeah.
I will definitely say bringing people together. Growing up in Detroit, Michigan, I have a large family, and I don't say that lightly. Like, no one believes this is the absolute truth. My uncle has 34 children. So when I say a large family, and we all gather. So I'm used to cultivating space where it's 40 plus 100 people and knowing how to hold that space. And so that's, I think, one of the strengths that me and my husband, we do. When we first moved here, we stayed in a one-bedroom apartment. And we would have about 40 people in our one-bedroom apartment. Capitol Hill, it was really hot. And when we asked people like, why don't we go to your house? And they was like, no, because it's not comfortable. We like coming here with 40 people crammed on like the floor and the countertops. And so that's part of it. One of the things that we did in July, and that's myself and a group that I just started called The Congregation. Check them out. We'll be on your radar really soon. We got offered space at Base Experimental Arts through this young group of white dancers, and they're called The Pilot. And so one of the things I wanted to do with that space is to offer free dance classes to Black and brown and queer bodies. And that is what we did. If you were not a Black and brown body, a queer body, a differently abled body, a trans body, you were invited into the space. And that's because I knew you and you were doing some type of work. If you weren't invited into the space, you got work to do. So it was really just that simple. And we had 5 rotating instructors through that process, and they were all Black and brown people, and they all got paid for their work. But the participants didn't have to pay. And that's important because within dance, and this is why I say I'm sick of dance and dancers, is that we're trying to figure it out and we just don't do it. So it's like Black folks, brown folks, queer folks, trans folks are like, I don't feel comfortable going into all of these different spaces taking classes, and I don't have the money. So if I have space, why not just offer the space up with no type of like thing over it? Like, you just come in and take class. The beautiful part about it, I didn't tell any of the instructors how to do their classes, and everyone had the same format unbeknownst to everybody else. And so what happened there, people that did not talk to each other, did not know each other, started to build community, and they're talking and getting to know each other to that day. So that's one of the things that's really important to me, that we're going to start again in October. So if you want to take a dance class and you're a Black and brown person, come see me. It will be free to you. And if you want to give us money to make sure Black and brown people get paid for them classes, talk to me and I will take your money. Shameless plug. But those things are important to me because we don't have to talk about anything except for our self-healing in the space. We didn't talk about white supremacy. We didn't talk about what brought us down. It was really a space to just uplift each other. And the classes and the bodies in the class had all different types of abilities. So that's what I want to cultivate and continue to cultivate, is that we offer things for people that cannot afford it or that have trouble accessing things. So.
Thank you, Danny, bringing people together. Yes. Reese, what's one of your strengths? How is that manifested in the work that you do?
Wow. I'm still thinking about it, like,
Yeah.
go through the list. I think one of the things that I more recently recognized is like, what is the core of something that I'm good at, and I think it's seeing the potential in fellow human beings, and being tenacious about connecting them with that potential, whether it's through outside resources or just the internal support to like continue to develop, whether it's confidence or just a sense of self or search for a sense of self.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's manifested a lot of ways. I think that was really highly developed. I was a program director for Rain City Rock Camp, which serves girls, women, and gender non-conforming individuals through empowerment through music, and just got a real sense of like how, unfortunately, how little, especially non-cis white men in our culture, think of ourselves or believe in ourselves. And even when we do, find ways to eat away at that and disbelieve the things that we sometimes believe, and then sometimes not. And so I think for me it's been really important to figure out ways to, you know, bringing that strength and bringing that history forward to help people see that that's not, there's a history of it. It's not like it's something brand new, and it's not something that's, you know, startling, that we are that strong, and we are that talented and creative and innovative, and that we have a legacy.
Yeah. What I love about everything that you both have said and in your unique ways of expressing and speaking from your own lived experience is that it sounds like you're pulling from a history, from an acknowledgement that there have been people before you doing this work. I think that when we talk about white supremacy and mitigating harm, whether it be at the interpersonal level all the way up to like systemically, for those of us who are tasked with the emotional labor of handling that work, it often manifests in feelings of isolation and loneliness, or feeling like the thing that we're going through is not something we can share with our community because we've been socialized to believe that the things that came before us like never existed, or that we have to be the pioneers, or that we have to be better, the best at what we do in order to get the recognition that we have to put in as 4 times, more times, like all of our emotional labor in order to get back something. And that is a narrative that I believe very, very deeply that we have to dispel. Speaking of narrative, this actually segues very smoothly into a little bit of fun time. So what I'm about to move into is a series of storytelling exercises that yours truly has developed and curated. Some of you in this room have been in my workshops, which is pretty exciting. For those of you who would like to participate, we have a lot of people in here. We will be doing these in partners. So we are sitting in like a really kind of like lovely way. I typically would ask people to stand in a circle, but I have a feeling that if we all were to stand in a circle, it might be a little bit too big. So I just ask that you stand up where you are, or if sitting down is better for you, please remain seated. So friends, I'm going to ask that we step off the platform and bridge this isolational, like, fourth wall weirdness. Oh, fantastic. You all can actually get rid of your mics. You're going to be part of our friends. So as I'm thinking about, like, white supremacist transactional culture, how can we mitigate, dispel the harm that is caused, at the same time building community compassion and, yes, policy that is embodied by justice and equity? There have been days where I wake up and I'm like, I wish I just had the superpower to control everybody's minds, and that would be like so equitable, but I can't. That's like weirdly spiritual and scary too. But the one thing that I can do is I can do the work on myself. When it comes to oppression, we experience oppression at 4 different levels. Systemically, across institutions, across different systems. For example, here in Seattle, we see inequities in Seattle Department of Transportation, which affects the homeless population in Pioneer Square, which affects the healthcare system, which affects our law enforcement system. That means systemically. Institutionally, which means within an institution. I went to a private liberal arts college 4 years, very traumatic. At the same time, had access to a quality education. Interesting dynamic. Institutional oppression. Then we have interpersonal, which is us with another person, or between other people. Then we have oppression at the internalized level, the oppression that we have against ourselves. For me, as a woman of color, who was not black, about 5 years ago, as I was beginning this really explicit community activist journey, I was called in by part of my community for perpetuating anti-black racism. And I had to do some serious work on myself because I have 2 moms. One of my mothers are gay. One of my moms is black. And I didn't know that up until 23 years old, I was unconsciously using that as an excuse to find spaces for myself in exclusive black spaces. And that I was unconsciously valuing what I said over what the black women in the room were saying. So that was all at once internalized superiority against black people. And I was devaluing the words of my other, like, Asian female counterparts, and that was internalized superiority. So this is where we get into storytelling. We all have our own unique lived experiences. Nobody can take our lived experience away from us. That's like the truth, I think. So what I'd love for you to do is I'd love for you to, in your vicinity, to find a partner. And between the two of you, choose who's going to be partner A, who's going to be partner B, and I'm going to give you 8 seconds to do it. Ready? Go. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My partner. 5 more seconds. 5, raise your hand if your partner A. Yeah, put him down. Raise your hand if your partner B. Yeah, put him down. Fantastic. Remember this. So I'm going to give you all 15 seconds to silently think about a story that's really, really important to you. Has to have been true, has to have happened to you. You can't be like, yeah, that one time my friend from 4th grade did this thing that I wasn't involved in, but I heard about vicariously. Can't be that. And it has to be, I invite that this story be one that you know very well, that has to have had an impact on you, right? Like, I'm not looking for you to be like, the first time I realized white supremacy was real, right? I'm not looking for that. You could be like, yeah, that one time that I had cereal that Saturday morning with my mom, who I love very much. That's meaningful. As long as it's meaningful to you, as long as it's true to you, it has to have happened to you. So think about that silently for 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. Partner A. You will have 1 minute to tell your story to partner B. The rules of the game go like this. You gotta talk for the whole minute. If you stop, you gotta keep going. Partner B, your responsibility is you gotta listen for the whole minute. You're not allowed to verbally respond. You can be like, oh my god, then what happened? Oh, I hate her. I hate her for you. I hate her. You can't do that. You can be like, wow, you can say that. You can be like, oh, you can do that. That's like fine. For 1 full minute, your job is to receive this person's story as they're choosing to tell it. After that 1 minute, we'll switch. Partner B will tell their story. Perfect. Hey, you just have to listen. We're all sitting, or some of you are standing. Another rule of the game goes a little something like this. If Danny is my partner, and I'm here to share my story with Danny, or I'm here to listen to Danny,
This ain't Sharon.
this ain't listening. In some ways, this isn't sharing. This is, wow, look at your shit, you know what I mean? So consider what personal space and presence looks like, as the sharer and as the receiver. Whatever that looks like to you, whatever is physically comfortable, right? So I want you to find yourself in physical relationship with your partner in a way that makes sense to you too. Yeah? Good? Good? Okay? Not yet? You're starting stories? I'm going to give you a minute. Get in your positions. Partner A, raise your hand. You have 1 minute to tell your story. Partner B, you've got to listen. I'm going to give you a 10-second countdown. When I say stop, rule of the game is you got to stop wherever you are in the story. And then I say partner B go, partner B goes. Here we go, everybody. 1 minute. Oh, question.
Yeah. Story again?
The story, again, has to be true to you, has to be important, and has to have involved you in some capacity. Fantastic. Here we go. Partner A, my imaginary watch. You have 1 minute. Go.
Okay, whatever. 8 years ago, I adopted and we are 16 years old now. We adopted a really tiny little thing. She's been heavily medicated. She's wrong with like ADHD. I've been way too much medicated. She's made it okay. Sometimes she's doing very well.
30 seconds.
And it's also really important to me to have this promotion and grow in my leadership skills in my position because I'm one of 3 people of color that work in my organization. So it's just really
10 seconds. Three, 2, 1. Partner A, stop. Partner B. Get ready to tell your story. Remember, partner A, no verbal responses. You don't have to stand there like this. You can be active. Just don't be like, oh, I know her too, and she's the worst. Why do women compete for the attention and approbation of men? Socialization. Okay, partner B, you ready? 1 minute. Here we go. Go. Partner A, your turn to listen. Three, two, one. October, we basically talk about what it was like to do the thing that we did. You can speak from your perspective as the storyteller, or you can speak as just as the person who was listening, because we did both things. What was that like? Also, it doesn't have to be like deep. You can be like, it was hard, and that can be your answer. Yeah? What was that like? Just shout it out or raise your hands.
I interrupted my partner.
Say it one more time.
I interrupted my partner.
You interrupted your
It
partner?
was to ask a clarifying question, but I still interrupted her. So.
Interrupted, asked her a clarifying question. I would hazard to say that you interrupted to ask that clarifying question because you were engaged.
True. Yes.
Oh, good. Keep that in mind. Interesting. What else? What was that like?
Hard to think of the story.
Hard to think of the story. Did other people have that similar thing? Would anybody like to maybe ponder why it was hard to think of the story? Yeah, back here.
The level of vulnerability you're willing to step into with a story of a stranger.
Oh, I was waiting for the word vulnerability to show up. It showed up real fast, okay? That level of like, how much are we gonna tell that's important to us to a complete stranger? I hear that. That's real. What was it like to be a listener? Yeah.
Difficult not to respond to judging my faces.
Difficult not to respond and judging your faces. Okay. Did anybody else have a different experience or a similar experience? Yeah.
Yeah, difficult not to respond with affirmations.
Difficult not to respond to affirmations. I see people nodding. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I was really empathizing with her scenario and felt her aggression, and was like, I know that feeling.
Mm-hmm. There's this thing that happens when we share stories with people. It's like some scientific research, even though science is problematic, that like mirror neurons that happen in our brains when we're talking with somebody and we empathize with them because of a shared experience. Where we, as like the organic animal machines that we are, want to affirm them that this form of communication often matches with verbal communication, but they're actually two separate things. So I helped like develop this exercise to really delineate at the same time while we're using language to communicate what it is like to be in that position where language is taken away from you. What does it mean to actually listen with the body in that way? Exciting. Any other last thoughts before we move into the next exercise? Right over here.
As a storyteller, I found myself second guessing if my story was worthwhile to tell.
Did other people have that experience? Yeah. Fascinating. That even though, right, I was like, choose a story that was important to you, and you made a choice, while you were pursuing the choice, at the same time you were questioning the choice. That happened to me quite a bit in college, and I started to think I was crazy. And I was like, wait a minute, is one of these voices actually my true intuitive voice, and the other one is socialization speaking in my ear? Or is the other one like my ego trying to keep me humble and accountable to my major objectives with like the people that I'm communicating with? We have all of these voices and experiences, this multiplicity of being in the world that lives in relational culture in a very beautiful way, the way that we're doing in the room right now. Often, when we're at our jobs, when we are perpetuating transactional culture, we're moving along a linear point where we're asked to bring only parts of ourselves to those interactions. Did anybody have a difficult time talking for the whole minute? Did anybody have a hard time telling the whole story in a minute? Fascinating, y'all are gonna love this next one. Okay, here we go. Annie. This one goes like this. Partner B is gonna go first. Partner B is gonna tell the same story. Partner A is listening, but this time they get to say stuff. And they get to say these three things: advance, detail, or emotion. They can say them in whatever order they want. You can say them as many times as you want in the story, but what it means is this. When my partner says advance, they mean, thank you so much for that, please move to the next chapter. For example, you can say advance after I say this thing to you. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was quite a slow. No, that's not advancing. Try again. Mary had a little lamb, and she was a vegetarian until she was 50. That makes sense? Jump to the next beat. Advance. Now, when they say detail, you're like, wow, this is so engaging. I want more. Okay, you ready? Okay, here we go. Mary had a little lamb.
Details.
Its fleece was white as snow. That one actually counts. Now, if they say emotion, they mean, wow, I'm loving this, but I need to know how you feel in this moment. So I'm going to say Mary had a little lamb, and I'm going to speak as Mary. Mary had a little lamb.
Emotion.
And she was so thankful to finally have something in her life to affirm her, because her parents were never home because they were immigrants working all the time, and she just wanted a companion to feel valued in life. Yeah, great. So here's the thing. Your partner can say advance as many times as they want. You ready? This is the hardest one. This is why I modeled this one. Just keep going, okay? Mary had a little lamb, and she became a bit, and then she went to heaven, and she went to hell, and she met Mary there, and she was like, I'm so, Mary, I'm talking to myself, are you my twin? And she was so baffled. And then she wrote a book about wellness. Okay, so Danny was having no mercy. No mercy on me. I encourage you to do whatever you want. I was going to be like, be nice, but I was like, whatever, Danny's nice to me. He was just holding me accountable to what I asked him to do. Make sense? Advance detail or emotion. And the only thing that you as the storyteller have to do is follow those as best you can. And the only thing you, as the editor this time, can say are those three things. None of like, oh, it's okay, we can go back in here. Advance, detail, or emotion. 1 minute, partner B, you get to start with the story. Partner A. Conversation and relationship. What was that like? You can speak as a storyteller or as the person who was editing. Back here?
A lot deeper.
A lot deeper. Yeah. Do other people have that experience? No. Yeah. Okay. What else was that like? Right over here.
As a storyteller, I began talking with more detail and more emotion while telling the same that story. So I included more detail what was going on from before.
Ah, so the prompt from your partner actually influenced you as you were moving forward to incorporate that into your process? Wow. Learning on the job, but also what a deepening and broadening of a thing that you thought you already knew, which was your own story, things that are coming up new for you at the prompt of somebody in conversation and relationship to you. Beautiful. What else? Back here.
So it made me try to go into detail, like think about how to flesh out the story. Almost like now I know how to better tell my story for the next time. So it's like making my writing thought process, or storytelling process stronger, tighter.
Ah, so it made your storytelling process tighter and stronger.
Create a better story for the next time.
Ah, so you're already, instead of just thinking linearly, like, right now I have to get to the end, you're already thinking farther. Which some people would challenge me and be like, that's still thinking linearly. And I could argue them all day, but it's not. That's for a totally different workshop. Thank you. Yeah, what else? What else is that like? Yeah.
We found out that we were both drawn to the emotion part, but it also felt more fulfilling because then when I asked about it, I could hear what was beneath the actions that were going on.
This exercise helped me realize as a playwright that I love action. So when you tell me to advance, I'm like, next chapter. If you're like emotion, I'm like, only so much as I'm willing to give right now. Which is not really pushing my edge of learning. If you're like detail, I'm like, I think details are like, bleh, big picture. Helps me realize my own idiosyncratic unconscious ways of being. I do this exercise all the time, not only with storytelling, but with like policy, with facilitation and community, because it's accessible and it challenges what I think I know. And I know that when it comes to equity and justice, we've got to do that all the time. We've got to challenge what we think we know, and that's one way to keep the conversations internalized and interpersonal, like alive and accountable. Okay, this next one is a little bit more fun. Theo, much more fun for you. It goes a little something like this. Everybody's going to start their story the same way. I woke up today and I blank. Let go of the story you were just telling. Your partner gets to say some things back at you. Not advanced detail or emotion. They get to say yes or no. When they say yes, they mean, wow, this is great. Please continue on in that vein. When they say no, they mean drastically change the circumstances. I'll give you an example of what is not drastically changing the circumstances. So I'll say the thing and you say, okay. I woke up this morning and I pushed snooze on my alarm 1 time. I woke up this morning and I pushed snooze on my alarm 2 times.
Yes.
I didn't drastically change the circumstances. So if Daddy's going to say no, I'm going to drastically change, and you just keep saying no.
That's
okay?
what I did.
Yeah, that's okay. That's
It's
good.
alarm, yes.
See? Mirror neurons.
Yes.
I woke up this morning and I pushed snooze on my alarm 1 time. I woke up this morning and I jumped out of it. I woke up this morning and I fell. I woke up this morning and I realized I was still. I woke up this morning and I pet my cat. I woke up this morning and I kicked down a building.
Yes.
So your partner gets to say no and yes as many times. You only get 30 seconds to do this. Only responsibility is person saying yes and no can only say yes and no. The person responding has to respond. Partner A, you get to start with, I woke up this morning and. Partner B, you say yes and no. 30 seconds begins now. I woke up. I woke up this morning and go. Okay, we're going to audit that real quick. Just shout out, what was that like? Fun? 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 Yes. What else was that like? You hated it.
I don't like saying no.
You don't like saying no. That's important to recognize. Important, because that I'm sure you can find in other areas of your life. Yeah? What else was that like?
It's fun to make up stories.
Fun to make up stories. Yes, yes. What else? Was anybody stressed? Yes. Yes, great. So I have to move quickly out of this because we've been having a lot of fun, but we also have this second part of tonight of programming that we gotta move into. All this to say is that these storytelling exercises were curated by myself and a team of people to help individuals tap in to storytelling, creativity, and active listening. This last exercise has a series of 3 after that delves deeper into imagination. We were all kids once, and I like to think that when we were all kids, we had an imagination that was like wide and deep. And somehow as we get older and are subject and victims of socialization, that muscle, which is so present in us when we're children, starts to like wither and atrophy. And that when we think about equity, one thing that helps me get up every morning is knowing that I can imagine what a truly equitable and accountable America looks like. I can do that for myself. I don't know if I can do that for other people. But imagine if us in this room were to imagine actually what that looked like. What a skill set. What a set of tools we would have to not only have conversations, but to move into action, to move into policy, to move into replacing transactional culture with relational culture. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. Typically I spend up to 90 minutes to 8 hours to 3-day workshops working on storytelling, but you all were so game, and give yourselves a round of applause.